I have one thing only to say. Sorcerer is saved! Oh, indeed. Hello, my fellow sorcerers who stuck with me, kept the faith, and believed that one day we would rise again and become an averagely good class compared to the others. Oh, well, our faith has been rewarded, for that day has arrived, or at least is arriving, as a promised land delivered unto us in but 2 weeks' time. Oh, and if you're wondering about the build in the background, that will be releasing in full tomorrow, and believe me, it's ridiculous, and I cannot wait for you to see it. See, we had, as I'm sure you're aware by now, a dev stream today, and it revealed a lot, and by a lot I mean 8 pages worth of buffs for Sorcerer across our skills, passives, legendary aspects, uniques, you name it, we are getting it upgraded. And it's hard not to feel a whole lot of hope in the face of that knowledge. And, well, of course, I needed to have a chat with you, go through all of the incoming buffs, which I should say as a caveat, the numbers are not final. They said they're about 95%, maybe even 100%, but just needed to get that out the way. I want to go through all of the changes, say what it might mean, and generally, it means a lot of good things in our future. If you want the most TLDR of basic cliff notes, well, it goes as follows. A load of previously unusable legendary aspects have been changed and or buffed, which in combination with some skill and unique changes, basically, Fireball will be a build, and it's looking like it'll be a very strong build, as will Meteor, due to just a sheer increase in firepower, because like fire's power, but also like firepower. This is why you know, this is the bonus. You get sorcerer stuff, but you also get top tier comedy. And Chain Lightning will be a build, like, definitely. It has gotten a huge increase fundamentally, and I am very excited for it. And Hydra, weaved into things as a conjuration influence, is looking very rosy, as well as the already fairly good Ball Lightning build getting a big bump too. Basically, Meteor and Ball Lightning were builds, and now they're going to be a lot better, and then Fireball and Chain Lightning are joining as two likely very viable Sorcerer playstyles that are going to be a lot of fun to try and just enjoy being powerful with something different. Whether they will be new best, like tippy-top meta pushing, that's obviously very hard to tell without testing, but definitively they will now stop being useless, pointless skills, and there's a lot of exciting things we're going to be able to do. So what are we going to be able to do? Let's get into it. So, Flickering Firebolt is going to start giving mana just whenever it hits an enemy, as opposed to just burning. That's nice, probably still won't get used, but, you know, it's something. Moving on then to the immediately most exciting change for me, and that is Fireball being a thing, because Fireball is awesome. Just the classic Fireball solves all your problems, blow up the room, and move on with your life. So now, this enhanced Fireball, this is just 50% increased radius full stop. Not based on travel distance, it's just 50%. It's just 50% bigger when you cast it. That makes it so much better for AoE. So yes, of course, that will extend to Illuminator's Bouncing Fireball, and that is wonderful. It really, really is, as just a nice bit of quality of life. But more important than that, well, Destructive Fireball is crit damage increased by 20%, going up to 30% for hitting 3 or more enemies. So just a nice, decent bump to Crit Fireball, and indeed, Crit Fireball will be the build. We'll get back to Fireball, though. Chain Lightning, oh yes! So, Greater Chain Lightning now increases damage every bounce full stop, not just you. And it's now 5% instead of 10%, but it bounces 5 times, meaning it'll scale up to 25%, which is amazing. It really is, because you're always getting those bounces on crowds of enemies, and now you just get to increase as it goes through them without wasting bounces off you to make that happen. This really is magnificent. And then we got Destructive, getting a 30% chance instead of 25 for Crackling Energy. That's fine, it is a good Crackling Energy generator, but we are going to be greatering now that it is just universal. After that then, Via's Mastery. The damage bonus is being increased to 15%. Which is pretty damn neat, honestly. If you're not running overflowing energy to reduce the cooldown of unstable currents, if that's not the core of your build, this just gets more and more appealing, but it's hard to imagine a shock build that doesn't want unstable currents, though you could definitely have one that doesn't need it up 100% of the time, ideally, like Clash does, so Via's Mastery might come into play, especially as it's getting a aspect that it's always had, but is now finally being put in game. We'll get to that. Esu's Ferocity then. This is a huge change. So, normally then, you get both of these bonuses when you kill an enemy with a critical strike. You get that increased damage and crit chance. But against a boss, you just don't get this. It's a dead passive against bosses or a single target because there's nothing to kill. So now, a crit will just trigger both bonuses. That is ridiculous. It's specifically to a boss, not the rest of the time, but that's a huge change that makes this a lot more appealing to choose, and you feel much less bad about it when doing a fire-based crit build. Combustion! I have said this needs a huge bump multiple times because it's kind of a joke. Dot damage is already the weakest type, and this is such a minor increase. Well, now it's just going to, on base, increase your burning by 20%. The current effect is just extra on top of that, so now it's worth taking just for the pure increase, even if you're only running one type of burning, assuming all you're running is burning. Obviously, if you're still weaving in crits and stuff, there is other options, but this is nice and feels a lot less bad that it even exists. So that's all for your skill and passive changes. Already very exciting stuff, especially in the world of fire and crit builds, and definitely a little bit on the firewall side of things. Honestly, the main thing I'm excited for when it comes to combustion is a possibility of a burning hydra take, but it's something I definitely want to explore. And yes, as I said, hydra's getting a little bump too that I can't wait to let you guys in on. But for now, the Paragon board. Both Ceaseless Conduit and Burning Instinct are getting a buff. This is just getting more damage, so our Crackling Energy hits harder. It already hits really hard, so this is nice to see, and might actually make a dedicated Crackling Energy build possible. And then Searing Heat is being changed, so using Fireball and Meteor just increases your critical strike chance full stop, not just for the skill that you have cast it with, which is nice too. So you can Fireball, and now your Meteor is more likely to crit. You can Meteor, and then your Fireball's more likely to crit, and so on and so forth, which is a nice little interplay there. Then we're getting a buff to 4 of our glyphs, and they are all tailored towards survivability, which we're actually getting a big bump on in this patch. Warding's damage reduction is going from 13% to 25%, and just pure damage reduction is quite potent in Diablo, so if you are emptying your mana, this isn't the worst. Maybe an Omnipower setup, though it's definitely the least exciting of them. Territorial then is going up to 15% from 10%. This was already a really solid glyph taken for survivability, and now it's even better. You will definitely feel this one and feel less squishy. Then we also have Reinforced going from 15% damage reduction while you have an active barrier. This is kind of exciting because, to skip ahead a little bit, Temerity is getting buffed, and that means we're going to get a lot of potential barrier options if we give up our leg slot having different affixes, and you might be able to maintain this most of the time. Though that said, even with just Sorcerer normal barrier uptime, that happens a lot and is definitely worth looking at, but the good news is we just have distinct defensive glyph options now to take and feel better about. Then when it comes to a rare node, Keeper of the Flames, this is increasing the damage reduction from 4% to 5%. So just less damage from enemies that are burning to play into the potential now Fireball or improved Meteor build. Smoldering Embers is also getting its damage reduction buffed, and on Frigid Fate, the damage reduction from vulnerable enemies is also getting buffed. And then the Lightning Resistance Resilience node is getting its maximum life increased, so we can have a higher total health pool, which helps the protection talent, as that does indeed scale off your maximum health, so more barrierage. Generally, we're gonna be harder to kill, which is something we have needed desperately. We'll see if it's enough, but it is definitely looking to be in that direction. Then we get to legendary aspects. The first of which being Serpentine. This is what lets you have 2 Hydras up at once, but the cost was they last less time. Well, this is a good segue to say that we are finally, for the most part, getting to be free of you get this, but in return you lose this, i.e. you get to have bouncing fireballs, but they do no damage now, have fun! They said they wanted to reduce the amount of cursed aspects and uniques that Sorcerer has. So a lot of things now give us a bonus effect and increase the damage instead of decrease it. So Serpentine now lets you have 2 Hydras and their duration is increased, not decreased. So 2 long-lasting Hydras. That is massive for any build that has woven in Hydras, and pure Hydra with a bit of conjuration is a really safe high-tier pushing build for Sorcerer. It doesn't kill quickly, but it kills effectively, and that will help a lot. There's also a fun little creeping death Hydra interaction that I want to explore, but even so, that is a good sign of things to come. And we get aspect of conflagration, more burning damage. That's just nice, it's not crazy, but hey, any buff is good. Engulfing flames, again, that burning damage is being bumped, and indeed, just seeing dot damage going up when it was almost there, or at least if not for a Wrathful Barberheart existing, is really nice. Then perhaps the most exciting aspect change, 3 curses. This is the increased crit damage on Meteor when you drop it on, and Fireball too, I should say, on a healthy enemy. This used to be 40% more crit damage on a healthy enemy. Now it is that at base, and then on a healthy enemy, it is doubled. So 40% more crit damage on Fireball, I mean, yes please, but then 80% when you hit a fresh enemy? That is one-shot territory, and that coupled with all the other fire changes is why Fireball is looking very, very rosy. We get Flamewalkers, which is just more movement speed when you come into your firewall, that's kind of whatever, and then Gravitational, the one that lets Ball Lightning rotate round you instead of just go out in a line. This used to reduce the damage of Ball Lightning for the privilege, now it rotates and does more. That is so good. That is so genuinely good. And this single change just makes that Ball Lightning build so much better. Then we get some more support for the newly buffed Chain Lightning. Instead of restoring mana when it bounces off you, much like the damage equivalent, it now just restores mana when it bounces in general. So at 5 bounces at a max roll, that is 15 mana refunded from Chain Lightning. If you can get the cost of this down to about 25 or so, maybe a bit less with mana cost reductions, well, you're almost going to get all of the mana back. And then you weave that in with maybe Omnipower, and now we start to look at something cool with the buffs to this skill. 1 extra mana supporting aspect on top of this, and suddenly you might actually be entering the world where you can Omnipower all of your mana for Chain Lightning, get it all immediately back, and just repeat it over and over, which is what I said it would take to be worth using as your Wrathful Heart. That is so cool, and I can't wait to test it when this gets implemented. And it gets even better, because now the bonus bounces of Chain Lightning aspect can go up to 4. Yes, it's still a chance, but up to 4. And if it does get up to 4 extra bounces, then suddenly you are getting a near full refund with the other aspect, everything at max rolls. You see how this kind of is now layering up with all of these changes for Chain Lightning to finally take some attention. We get charged aspect, more movement speed for longer, that's kind of whatever. Bounding conduit, again, more movement speed, it's just fine. And then here, a new aspect can drop now. This was always in the game, we knew about it, but it's Mage Lord's aspect. This makes Via's Mastery. With this aspect, the damage reduction from close enemies goes from 20% to 90% at a max roll, which makes this a hugely tanky opportunity for a close-range shock build that doesn't care about overflowing energy, and I'm very, very curious to see how that will feel. That is a huge survival bump. And then aspect to Frozen Orbit, just giving more of a bump of damage to Frozen Orb when it reaches the end of its destination, which is just nice because Frozen Orb honestly is making a comeback and is a very nice addition, especially thanks to the enchantment that it has in a lot of builds, so that's just welcome. But it doesn't stop there! Yet another page of legendary aspects. Storm Swell going from 11 to 20 to 21 to 30 is a big deal, as that's vulnerable damage, which has a huge effect and makes that so much more attractive, as we always have the barriers up, and Frost Nova, especially on Ice Shards, or Frozen Orb that makes enemies vulnerable. This is just going to be a mandatory damage increase for any build along those lines. Snow Veiled Aspect, this made you unstoppable when you Ice Armored. Now it also gives you 10% bonus armor, which turns into a much nicer defensive aspect. I don't know if it's going to beat out something like Disobedience, but it is good to have the option. Then this one, Incendiary. This is now not just chance on burning damage to restore mana. This was already buffed, by the way, to 12 to 17%, but now it's just fire damage. That is a huge deal for fireball builds that need the mana to function. That means when we are bouncing fireballs through enemies, every bounce has that chance to restore mana, which, you see where that's going, that is tasty! We might have infinite mana fire builds, much like we can with Ice Shards. Snow Guard's aspect, and is Snow Guard's aspect, which was already a decent damage reduction for Blizzard if you needed it, now just lasts longer when you leave it, so that's nice too. And then Concentration is increased as well. This is just more mana regen for not taking damage, and you now have to not take damage for less time to get it. Still not great, but an increase is an increase. And then the Gloves of the Illuminator, the final little bit of this new fireball buffed world we live in. This is getting its damage buffed even further, all the way down to a potential 35%, meaning you only need to hit enemies with a bounce twice, and you have got a damage increase over fireball normally. And to make that happen, the distance the bounces take is shortened. So you're much more likely to actually have that happen alongside the radius increase buff, and yeah, Gloves of the Illuminator looks very much to be firmly on the menu, and it's something I've been wanting for a long time. And lastly, we get one of our hearts that was an absolute joke, Spellbinding, that gave us elemental resist when we took elemental damage, changed to just pure DR when you take elemental damage, which actually makes it quite good, if not for the Revenge Heart existing, which is just kind of better because that's all of the time damage, and we get damage back from it. But stacked on top of this is a path to very much a lot of DR, which is again something that we need. And that's kind of it then. That's a quick look at everything and what it means for Sorcerer. So bottom line, there is 4 key exciting takeaways here. There's a couple fringe ones like Ball Lightning and a few other builds like Hydra getting a increase, some other aspect buffs just help other builds and things like that. Burning being a little bit more viable in a lot of ways, but the big 4 is less you get this but lose this aspects and design philosophy. That is massive, and I cannot be happier that that's finally happened. I've talked so much about how it's ridiculous, especially compared to the other classes that just don't see that happen as much. Then we have all of the survivability buffs, a lot of it baked into glyphs or aspects or optional things we can now invest into that are meaningfully worth doing to stay alive, which is what we needed the most help with, and I can't wait to see how much it actually does help. And then Fireball being a build and Chain Lightning being a build as the last 2, that is both very, very cool. So whether it'll completely fix the class, there's still a few fundamental design issues going on, but it is a huge help. Instead of a band-aid over a gaping wound, we've now got a cast on a broken leg, which is a big step up, medically speaking, I suppose is one way of describing it. So overall, very pleased, and I really can't wait to explore it all, experiment it, come up with new builds, and share them with you guys after the patch hits. And I will always, as I've always said, keep on this endless. Sorcerer will be the best match for any of you that want to join me in that glorious goal. For now then, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.